Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I am so glad to be with you today. I wanted to start out a little bit differently today by giving you an update. You may have noticed that I have missed a few days in uploading new podcasts, and there's a very good reason for that. And I just wanted to let you know what has been going on and let you know that I'm not leaving the podcast. I'm still going strong, but I'm doing things a little bit differently now. So I started doing real estate about 6 years ago. And I have really enjoyed that and I'm really good at it. Yet I always knew that there would be something else for me in the future as well. And in this time recently, I actually was hired to be a recruiter for my brokerage as well. And I really enjoyed doing that. I loved mentoring people and helping them to pass the real estate exam and helping them to know what was so great about our brokerage, because I really loved my broker. And this man, I have so much respect for him. I've completely broken down in his office before, and he helps me pick up the pieces. He's that kind of a person. He doesn't just care about you being successful as a realtor. He cares about you being successful as a person. And very, very close to my heart, he's also somebody who really believes in the power of positivity and the power of mindset and putting yourself in a good space energetically so that you can be successful in all areas of your life. And so it was very, very easy for me to do this recruiting job for him. And yet there still was this nudge inside of me, this isn't it. There's something else going to be out there. And especially since, February or so, I just felt like there was going to be a big change. And you know how when you get intuition like that, you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure what that means. I don't see any doors opening or anything like that. And so you just keep moving forward. And so that's what I did. I just kept moving forward. And then I was asked to apply for an executive assistant position at a nonprofit called My Story Matters. Now, I have kept my eye on this nonprofit for quite a while. I have a very dear friend who works with them, and I've even taken classes from them, and what they teach is absolutely powerful. So what they do is they work with homeless people, treatment centers, at-risk youth, refugees, addiction recovery, and foster care. And they're currently, one of their largest focuses right now is working with incarcerated people and in the prisons as an inside out organization, meaning that they go inside while people are in prison and teach them the skills that they need to be successful once they come out. Now, of course, their focus, those are some of their big time focuses, but they are open to teaching anybody who wants to learn what they teach. And what they do teach is they first help people to create a vision, something that they want to be, something, that they want to do. And it's separate from their actions or their circumstances. And this is so important because what people do is a reflection of who they believe they are. And so you cannot change the actions without taking a deeper dive into the identity and the motivation behind those actions. So for example, if somebody believes that they are a criminal, then they will then act like a criminal. If somebody believes that they are worthless, that they don't have any value in this world, then they will in turn act that way. They will have conversations. People like that tend to go suicidal. And I know this because I have been there myself. And I know what those kind of thoughts and actions, that correlation looks like. So it is so, so powerful to be able to see this transformation in real time. And so when I was asked to apply, I jumped at the chance. And sure enough, I got that. And so the last 6 weeks or so, I have been in transition from finishing up my recruiting job and then starting up this executive assistant job. And I'm not quitting real estate. I'm doing that as a side. And so, because I've got some very, very dear clients who are still want to work with me. And so I am absolutely doing that. But it's so, so exciting to be able to see a bigger vision in my own life. We talk here all the time about finding your purpose in your own story. And I am a perfect example of that. I knew I needed to go into real estate. I didn't know why. And there were times when I was like, this isn't exactly where my heart is. Why am I doing this? And yet my intuition always said, you need to stay. It's not time for you to leave yet. You've got to keep going down this course. And so I just followed that intuition. And let me tell you, sometimes it was really hard. And I also learned a lot through that process. The last 6 years, I have had more personal development doing real estate than any other period in my entire life. And so sometimes our intuition leads us down a path that we may not understand. And yet it is also potentially your greatest growth time. And so this is exactly what this has been for me. So with all of that change, it has really taxed my own time and my own ability to put out the episodes that I want to in the kind of quality that I want to do too. So going forward, what my plan is to just do it once a week because I felt really, really good about that. I don't want to get rid of or stop doing the podcast. I feel like this is a very vital thing for my own growth. And I feel like what I'm sharing has value to those of you who are listening. So I will be still doing my Monday post and I will mix it up with just me or with my guests. And so if you have any questions or comments for me, I'm happy to field those and to help you know where I'm at. So in all of this, there have been a lot. It's been just a ton of change, and change can be difficult. It's stepping into the unknown. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. And some people will even tell you things that will make you question your decisions and even yourself. And I definitely experienced this in real estate, and it's really interesting because those who teach real estate and how to be successful at it, it's very much a go-getter, sales job. And that has been great to learn. And also, there's this underlying, well, if you don't quote unquote make it in real estate, then it's because you aren't good enough and you haven't done all the right things. And, basically it's considered a failure, right? And so I really had to wrestle with this. Well, if I change into a different career, am I a failure? And so I had to step into that and go, okay, I've always known there was something more than this. And I'm finding that. And it doesn't mean that everything that I have done equates to being a failure. And so even though the things that you might be receiving and hearing from other people, they might tell you that you're a failure, tell you that because you're changing, the way that they understand you to be, they take it personally and they take it as, well, they don't understand it. And that's the thing. Nobody does understand it but you. And so that is why it is so important to step into the courage of change and step into the uncomfortableness of change, because that is where, ironically, you will find your confidence. When you step into that uncertainty, when you find that courage and you act on what you know that you should do, you will tap into your purpose. You will fulfill the measure of your creation, meaning that you will be actively living what your purpose is. And it's so ironic to me that you really cannot build courage unless it's done, unless you act on it. You can't read a book and go, okay, I'm going to be courageous now. You can't talk to somebody or watch a movie or, watch a documentary about being courageous and then all of a sudden be courageous. It actually takes action. You learn courage through the action of stepping into the unknown. So let's take a look at some examples of people who have really stepped into that space of uncomfort and that space of, knowing they needed to do an action and not really knowing what it was going to turn out to be. I think a fantastic example of this is Lori Burkhead. She was my guest from last week. She had this dream, this vivid, vivid dream of accomplishing something that she knew absolutely nothing about. She had no idea how to farm. She had no idea how to grow anything. She'd spent her life so far in an office building, and yet she knew that she needed to do this, and it took a long time. And I think so often we think, oh, well, I feel like I need to do this. So number one, everything's going to work out. And number two, it's going to just happen. And it's going to happen soon because that's what I felt like it was supposed to be. So from the time that she had this dream of purchasing a farm and growing food and giving it to people and actually purchasing that farm, that was 3 years. That took a long time. And it took a long time to get her husband on board to where she was at. And she didn't deviate. She still held true to what she felt like that her mission, her purpose was. And that took a lot of courage. It took courage to be strong in the presence of her husband who wasn't on board at first. It took courage to talk to other farmers who told her that she was crazy and that she was doing things wrong. It took a lot of courage to keep going. And I think that is so commendable and so inspiring to see somebody like Lori Burkhead do and accomplish what she knew in her heart was possible, but she had no idea how to do it. So I'm going to tell you a story about another man, and this is my second example. So this man's name is Sage. So with this new position, I had the opportunity to witness coaching being done in the Salt Lake prison. And it was such an amazing experience. We had 4 different classes, and each class was in a what do you call them? Like a section of the prison that got more and more secure. So our last class that we did was in the maximum security. And in our first class, there was a man that had been there that had just gotten out of prison the week before. And so she was returning and reporting what happened to this man. So he got out of prison and he was so nervous because he would called Amy. So Amy is the executive director that I work with. And so he called up Amy, and this man's name is Sage. So Sage called Amy and he said, Amy, I want to see my son. He had to leave Utah and get to California. He had 24 hours. And he said, one of my biggest desires is to play ball with my son before I have to leave. And so Amy walked him through, okay, what are the things that are in your control and how can you use the tools that you have learned and accomplish that goal? And he said, well, I know what I need to do and I need to call my wife, but she's going to be so mad and she's going to, not want to let me see my son. And so she said, well, you can call and you just need to make sure that you stay in control of yourself and you give her space to answer the way that she needs to answer. And so he called his wife, and sure enough, she got angry and she hung up on him and all that. And he said, called Amy back again and said, what do I do? And she said, call her back. And you obviously did not make it a safe place. So how can you make that conversation a safe place? And so he said, I can do this and I can do that. And so he called his wife back again and he said, told her, what will make this a safe experience for you? And so he turned it over to her rather than demanding, said, asked her, how can I make this a safe experience for you? And so she said, I'm willing to talk to you in a public place like Starbucks. And so they met inside Starbucks. And at the end of that conversation, she agreed to let him play ball with his son. And so he sent back these pictures of him playing ball. So that was on Tuesday. He had to get to California by Wednesday. Now, part of his vision, part of what he wanted to do and what he decided, this is what I'm shooting for once I get out. He wanted to do two things. Number one, he wanted to make jewelry out of rocks and things like that, right? So, and then the second thing he wanted to do was be a firefighter. So he goes down, and remember, he gets out of prison and Tuesday, he's in California Wednesday. So later that week, he is walking down the sidewalk. And while he was in prison, he had been watching all these videos of how to do this jewelry, just learning everything that he could about it so that when he got out, then he would at least understand the concept so that then he could practice. So he's in California and he's walking down the road in Southern California. And all of a sudden, he sees this guy that he has been watching on YouTube. And he's been watching this guy for months. He has seen every single video that he does. And so he grabbed his courage and he actually went up to this man and he said, "Hey, can I talk with you for a little bit?" And he was very honest about who he was and where he had been and why and where he wanted to go. And the man said, "Yeah, let's sit down and chat." And so Sage talked with this man and he said, "I really want to get into this. Do you know of any kind of a mentorship that where I could really learn from some masters on how to create this beautiful jewelry?" And so the man said, "You know what? Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know a few people. Let me make some phone calls and I will get back to you." And he said, "Fantastic. That's great." And so they parted ways. So once he was doing that, his second goal was to become a firefighter. And so he happened into an area of town and they had this big tent that said firefighters needed. And so he went inside of this tent. And by the time he got out, he had a scholarship to go to school and he had all of his ducks in a row to become a firefighter. So he was really, really excited about that. Well, he got the phone call back from this jewelry guy and he said, "I haven't been able to find you a mentorship with any of my contacts, but I do have one and it's with me. And I would be willing to mentor you. I've got some big contracts. I'm doing some jewelry for Snoop Dogg and he listed off all of these other, high, A-list people who had contracts with. And he said, "I could actually use some help doing this and I'd be happy to teach you how to do all of this." And so this was Friday when that happened. So he gets out of jail or out of prison on Tuesday. He meets with his son on Tuesday. By Wednesday, he's in California. And by Friday, he's got everything ready for him to become a firefighter and to learn this jewelry trade. So that is in the space of 4 days, my friends. It took a lot of courage for him to change the way he conversed with his ex-wife. It took a lot of courage for him to talk to this man just off the street, and so totally random. It took courage for him to step into that firefighter booth or tent and get that information. Yet he had a vision of who he wanted to be and what kind of life he wanted to live. And it looked nothing like what put him in prison in the first place. He was a changed man. So as I'm in prison with my executive director, Amy, and she's telling this to all of the prisoners that were once in Sage's class. I mean, this is only a week later. She said, "Look at all of these things. He got to talk to his son. Now he's got this contract as for a mentor, and he's looking at becoming a firefighter." And you could see the energy in the room was palpable. And you could see hope, visually see hope in these people's lives. If that could happen to Sage, then it can happen to me. And that is what it looks like to step into courage, just like with Lori. Same kind of thing. Having that vision, knowing what you want and going for it. It takes courage. So here's another example of somebody who is courageous, and that is you. Every time you act intentionally, every time you stand up for your values and your boundaries, every time you find the good inside of you and the good all around you. Every time you tell yourself you can do it, every time you reach outside of your comfort zone and you embrace that uncomfort, that is being courageous. And you have the opportunity every single day to wake up and choose to step into that uncomfort zone. And it is uncomfortable, but that is where the magic happens. It takes courage to do something you've never done before. It takes courage to follow your intuition. Even if that intuition makes no sense, it takes courage to act on, whatever it is you need to do and to act even though you don't understand the how. It takes courage to stretch and reach for being who you are meant to be. Every single day, you have that opportunity to be courageous. So own it. I know you can. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your